G'day again, my friends. Today we're going to start with the passage from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 11, reading verses 2 to 11. When John heard in prison what the Messiah was doing, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" Jesus answered them, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offence at me." As they went away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds about John. "What did you go out into the wilderness to look for? A reed shaken in the wind? What then did you go out to see? Someone dressed in soft robes? Look, those who wear soft robes are in royal palaces. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, 'See, I am sending my messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way before you.' Truly I tell you, among those born of woman, no one has arisen greater than John the Baptist, yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." One of the catchiest songs in the musical Godspell is a duet between Judas and Jesus. It shows how little Judas understands what Jesus is on about. Jesus sings of the woes of life, of people who feel sad, accursed, hopeless. He pictures a man whose wife is crying, whose olive tree is dying, who feels that not even Job had it any worse. He says, "Your temples are greying, your teeth are decaying, and creditors weighing your purse." And it's at that time you mustn't forget God's blessings that lie ahead. Judas, on the other hand, says, "Some men are born to live at ease, doing what they please, richer than the bees are in honey." He says they never grow old or feel cold, they make money out of nowhere, and they never care that they can't take it with them. He ends, "But who is the land for, the sun and the sand for? You guessed, it's all for the best." Judas envies the rich and wishes to have some of what they get. Jesus empathizes with the poor and points them to coming blessings when the judgment falls on all, and only those covered by the salvation he brings us shall stand. The conversation between John's disciples and Jesus parallels this song, though John is much more perceptive than Judas. John's disciples came to Jesus. John hoped Jesus would reveal himself as the Messiah and put everything right. Now he's imprisoned and fears for his life. Things don't go well for Herod's prisoners. So imagine what it's like for John. He knows the Psalms, "Why do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth rise up and the rulers band together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, 'Let us break their chains and throw off their shackles.'" The Lord scoffs at these puny, arrogant rulers and sends his son. The Lord tells his son, "Ask me, and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession." He will smash his enemies like broken pottery. Perhaps John also remembers Micah chapter 5. "But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be a ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. This coming ruler will shepherd his flock in the strength and majesty of the Lord, and the people will live securely under his worldwide reign." Yes, the Messiah will defeat the invaders as a young lion mauls and mangles a flock of sheep. Foes will be destroyed, idols will be torn down, wrath and judgment will be poured out on the disobedient nations. And these are John's images of the coming Messiah. Yet why has the Messiah not come for him? Why has he faithfully proclaimed the coming ruler, yet now dreads his own destruction in a dark and dirty dungeon? The Messiah John looks for, the Messiah Judas seeks in God's spell, is the one who repels invaders, who replaces rulers, who becomes a new ruler, who destroys his enemies and pours favour on his followers. John's question is, are you really the Messiah, or should we look for someone else? But the world's way is always the way of imposing rulership, the way of including some and excluding others. In the 1917 Russian Revolution, the Tsar and his family were overthrown and murdered, his supporters massacred, and Lenin and Stalin became the rulers. The new rulers received wealth and yet more power, while millions, even of the people they promised to liberate, starved and disappeared. Look up kulaks. Again, you might not be killed in a church power grab, but they also happen. Many Catholics blame Luther for the Reformation split, but he didn't excommunicate himself. He requested answers and no answer was given. He challenged the powerful. Those seeking power for power's sake always find someone who doesn't fit the increasingly narrow definition of acceptability. When splits happened, did a group really withdraw from the main body, or did the new rulers expel those who wouldn't dance to the piper's tune? John probably never put it that way in his mind. He probably thought he clearly understood the coming Messiah and God's kingdom, but Jesus had another idea. Jesus replies to his question, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offence in me." Jesus never asked what side people are on if they're in his party. Lepers were considered both morally unclean and physically contagious. They were the most excluded of Israel's outcasts, yet Jesus touched and healed them. Or remember in chapter 8 when a centurion asks Jesus to heal his seriously ill boy. The Romans were the invading oppressors, brutal racist thugs, and ritually unclean to boot. But Jesus offers to come right to his home to heal the servant. A Messiah like John expects would never have helped any Roman military leader. An upholder of Jewish purity wouldn't have entered a Roman house, but Jesus would have. And there's a reason to believe that this centurion and his youth were in a homosexual relationship. Jesus said nothing about it. He just healed the sick person. In a world focused on overthrowing rulers, on robbing the rich and degrading even the respectable, in a world lusting to bereave the rulers of their gains, Jesus came making no distinctions, pouring out blessing on all who would receive them. It doesn't mean he lacks concern for justice, far from it. The psalm still stands. Those common cause insurrectionists against the Lord and his Messiah will ultimately suffer. Those who abuse the powerless will face the judge. But Jesus has just as biblical a picture as John. There's not only one picture. As we read in Isaiah 29, in that day the deaf will hear the words of the scroll, and out of gloom and darkness the eyes of the blind will see. Once more the humble will rejoice in the Lord, the needy will rejoice in the Holy One of Israel. The ruthless will vanish, the mockers will disappear. Or the famous Isaiah 61 verse 1 says, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners." As the embodiment of God's kingdom, Jesus demonstrates grace and mercy, offered to all. Threats and judgment don't affect real change, but openness and welcome lead to repentance and love. And in demonstrating great mercy and free grace, Jesus also reveals a kingdom never imagined by the world's Judases and even beyond John's full comprehension. It's amazing how the Western world has changed because of Jesus and his model of selfless sacrifice. The Romans crucified hundreds together just as a warning to others. They destroyed Carthage so it could never again rise. The Romans protected citizens, but treated non-citizens worse than wild animals. Yet the Romans were civilized by a poor peasant builder who went about doing good. So Jesus addresses the crowd, the people who've been listening into the conversation between him and John's supporters. He asks 3 questions. What did you go out into the wilderness to look at? A reed shaken by the wind? What then did you go out to see? Someone dressed in soft robes? Look, those who wear soft robes are in royal palaces. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? 3 questions to set them thinking. Did you come all this way for nothing? Did you come to the desert to see what you would find in a palace? Or did you really come looking for a prophet? Of course, there were many mere curiosity seekers, but many people really did undertake a difficult journey into a harsh landscape to find a prophet. Isn't that what they looked for? And isn't that what they found? Jesus makes the conclusion quite clear. Was he a prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it's written, "See, I'm sending my messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way before you. Truly, I tell you, among those born of woman, no one has arisen greater than John the Baptist, yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." As the Messiah's forerunner, John is truly great. He knew that the time had come for the people to be shocked and startled once more by a true prophetic voice. No other prophet had anything like his mission, though they were great in their own right. Yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. However great John was, those who are in God's kingdom are greater. It doesn't matter how weak your faith or what a sense of failure and even worthlessness you have. John could only ever stand before the kingdom's arrival, while we disciples inhabit it. Here's the platform guard announcing the train's arrival. We are passengers who board for the journey. John could never really understand Jesus' depiction of the Messiah's role. It's too new for him. If we need a little more clarity, let's read on a little further. Jesus adds in verse 12, "From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has been subjected to violence, and violent people have been raiding it. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John." This encapsulates the contrast between John's way and Jesus' way. When did the days of John the Baptist start? Wasn't it a couple of years before Jesus' own ministry began? So Jesus says that since John began his ministry a couple of years ago, violent people, both the Romans and the opponents of Romans and their puppets, have been treating people who want to go Jesus' way to violence. John couldn't yet follow Jesus because Jesus himself hadn't fully suffered at the hands of violent people, nor had Jesus died, lain in the tomb, and risen again. We have seen it and believed. We know the way of snatching after worldly power is the way of violence. There is a power in love and care, a power in grace and mercy and peace, which ultimately defeats the powers of this world. And that's the path we must follow as far as we possibly can. It's not a path destined to fail. It's Jesus' way, and it will win in the end. Recently, in our church, we heard about the Sermon on the Mount, including, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Meekness is not weakness. Alexander the Great's favourite warhorse, Bucephalus, was described as meek. To be meek is to have your power in check, under control. The first takeaway from this is to be very wary of those who want to accumulate power to themselves. It's been a big problem in politics, even here, not only in the US and the UK. And it's a problem in families, in churches, in denominations. Watch out for it and resist its encroachments. Meanwhile, the more we can live out Jesus' model and not John's model, the more the world will change. But our change must be radical if the world is even to notice us. How can we model ourselves more closely on Jesus? May his Spirit dwell in us and lead us into all truth. Amen. Thank you, my friends, for watching. May God bless you. If you found this message helpful, please contact your pastor or priest to find out more about following Jesus. If you want to help this ministry grow, please like using the icon below and consider subscribing, which is free, to be alerted when a new message is posted.